The beast in the lab. The laboratory stank of fear. Not the fear of students, though plenty of that clung to the walls, but the fear of the creature in the containment pen. Its hot breath misted the reinforced barrier, teeth bared in a constant snarl. The alien students seated at their observation desks pretended to take notes, though their trembling frills, twitching antennae, and flattened scales betrayed the truth. The Terror-Hound growled again, low and rumbling, making the floor panels hum. Professor YYRTH, towering and reptilian with scales like dull bronze, adjusted his spectacles with all the calm of an academic reviewing slides. "Observe," he lectured in a gravelly tone, "the apex predator of Draft Prime. A beast bred for battle, its lineage weaponized across 4 empires. Subjugation is possible only through force and pain. It does not know loyalty, only dominance." The students murmured uneasily. None dared glance at the monster longer than a heartbeat. Its body was massive, a fusion of muscle and sinew beneath quill-like fur. Glowing amber eyes cut through the dim light, promising violence. Every time someone shifted in their chair, the beast's growl deepened, like rolling thunder. The lab doors hissed open, and a newcomer stepped inside. Daniel Hale adjusted the strap of his satchel, blinking at the sudden silence that fell. He was human, one of only a handful admitted to Velar Prime's universities. His brown hair was mussed, his jacket worn from travel, and his expression bright with the curiosity of someone who still believed in wonder. Every alien gaze locked on him. A few students hissed warnings under their breath. The Terror-Hound had frozen, its eyes locked onto Daniel's frame. The growl that followed was not the steady rumble it had offered all morning. It was sharper, deeper, and directed. The human, Professor YYRTH said, his voice carefully neutral. "You will take a seat, farthest row, if you value your limbs." Daniel's gaze flicked from the professor to the beast. "That's the Terror-Hound?" His tone was casual, almost amused, though his heartbeat raced. "Looks distressed." "Distressed?" a feathered student repeated, their crest bristling. "That thing has eaten platoons whole." The Terror-Hound paced, claws screeching on the floor. It bared its fangs at Daniel, a guttural growl echoing through the chamber. Daniel tilted his head. Something in its eyes. Yes, there was anger, but beneath it, fear. Loneliness. He remembered the same look in the eyes of strays back home, cornered behind dumpsters, baring teeth to hide desperation. Professor YYRTH wrapped his clawed fingers against the podium. "Approach no closer, human. This beast respects nothing but dominance. To extend your hand is to offer it as food." Daniel ignored the warnings. His feet carried him closer, slowly, steadily, until he stood only a meter from the containment barrier. Every alien in the room hissed or gasped. One covered their eyes, unwilling to watch the dismemberment about to unfold. The growls rose to a deafening roar. The Terror-Hound's muscles tensed, ready to spring if not for the barrier. Saliva dripped from its jaws. Daniel crouched down, bringing himself to the beast's eye level. His movements were slow, deliberate. He raised his hand, not palm out in dominance, not clenched in threat, but open, relaxed, offering. "Hey there," he said softly, as though speaking to an old friend. "You're not so bad, are you? Just scared." The Terror-Hound froze. The silence was so complete that the hum of the containment field sounded deafening. The beast sniffed, nostrils flaring. Its growl faltered into something uncertain, almost confused. Then, with a cautious motion, it pressed its muzzle against the barrier, just enough for Daniel's fingers to brush fur. Professor YYRTH inhaled sharply. "Impossible." Daniel's fingers scratched lightly behind the creature's ear. The fur was coarse, quills softening near the base. The Terror-Hound's glowing eyes fluttered half shut, a low rumble vibrating its chest. Not a growl of rage, but a sound startlingly close to a purr. The students gaped. Some dropped their pens. One fainted outright. Daniel smiled faintly. "See? Just needed a little kindness." The beast leaned harder against the barrier, tail-like appendage thumping against the floor with a sound that made the entire class flinch. Professor YYRTH's claws scraped the podium. No being has ever pacified a Terror-Hound with touch alone. Not even the warlords of Drath. "Human, what are you?" Daniel kept scratching gently, eyes never leaving the beast's. just someone who used to have a dog back home. The Terror-Hound sighed, a sound that reverberated through the chamber like a storm quieting. Its growls had ceased entirely. The chapter closed with Daniel kneeling in front of the containment field, his hand against the beast's ear, while an entire classroom of aliens stared as though they had just witnessed sorcery. The scratch heard round the lab. The lab buzzed with chaos long after Professor YYRTH dismissed the class. Students clustered in tight circles, whispering in hushed tones. Words like sorcery, unnatural, and beast bond carried across the chamber. None of them dared approach the Terror-Hound's pen. None but one. Daniel Hale lingered by the containment field, crouched at eye level with the beast. His hand scratched behind its jagged ear, the exact spot where coarse quills gave way to softer fur. The creature leaned into his touch with surprising gentleness, its massive frame vibrating with a rumble that, to Daniel's ears, sounded suspiciously like a dog's happy growl. Unthinkable, Professor YRTH muttered for the 20th time, pacing with his claws clasped behind his back. His bronze scales caught the sterile light, eyes flicking constantly between human and hound. Centuries of study, and never has a Terror-Hound submitted without bloodshed. Daniel glanced up at him. Submitted? He doesn't look very submissive to me. He looks relaxed. He gave the beast's jaw a gentle scratch, grinning when the creature leaned harder into it. See? Just like my old lab back home. Several students recoiled at the comparison. A slender insectoid hissed, clicking its mandibles. You dare equate that war-spawned engine of slaughter with the domestic companion? Daniel shrugged. A dog's a dog, no matter the teeth. The class erupted in argument, some crying blasphemy, others insisting the human was bewitched. A few scribbled frantic notes, as if recording the moment might help them understand the impossible. Through it all, Brutus, Daniel had already decided that was a good name, remained pressed against the barrier, wuffing contentedly. Professor YYRTH snapped his tail to silence the uproar. Enough. There is research to be done. His gaze fixed on Daniel, sharp and calculating. Human, you will return here tomorrow. Alone. I must observe this phenomenon under controlled conditions. Daniel opened his mouth to object, but the professor raised a claw. Do not argue. This is the most significant xenobiological event in a century. The Concord will demand data. Brutus gave a soft huff, as if echoing the professor's insistence. Daniel smirked. Guess that's settled. The following day, the lab was empty save for Daniel, Professor YYRTH, and the Terror-Hound. Without the buzzing fear of other students, the room felt quieter, though no less tense. Daniel approached the enclosure. Brutus paced restlessly until he drew near, then whined and pressed against the barrier, eyes locked on him. He remembers you, YYRTH observed, voice low with fascination. Remarkable. Terror-Hounds are infamous for memory, grudges carved in blood. Yet this one greets you with affection. Daniel grinned, reaching out to rub the beast's neck. That's what happens when you treat someone like a friend instead of a weapon. Weaponry is their sole function, YYRTH countered. You rewrite instinct itself. They repeated the experiment with increasing daring. The professor dropped the barrier to its lowest safe level. Daniel slipped his hand inside. No attack came. Instead, Brutus pushed his whole massive head into the human's lap, exhaling a breath hot enough to ruffle Daniel's hair. The professor's stylus clattered from his claws. Unprecedented. Impossible. Glorious. He scrawled notes in a frenzy, muttering equations and theories in his native tongue. To Daniel, it wasn't about data. It was about the look in Brutus's eyes, no longer wild but searching, trusting. He scratched under the beast's chin until its eyelids drooped with bliss. News traveled faster than YYRTH's data reports. By the week's end, the entire campus knew. The human had tamed the Terror-Hound. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered Daniel had discovered a secret control pheromone. Others accused him of genetic manipulation, or worse, telepathic domination. None believed it was simply ear scratches. The alien students kept their distance, fear and fascination warring in their eyes. Daniel caught fragments of conversation in the cafeteria. He'll unleash it on us. What if it imprinted? What if it bonded? Humans, unpredictable. Not everyone stayed at Whispers. One evening, as Daniel left the lab, a heavy-bodied alien blocked his path. Korvek, a reptilian with jagged spines and a perpetual sneer, loomed tall. You think yourself clever, human, Korvek hissed, tail lashing. That beast is not your friend. It is a blade, and blades cut. When it turns, you will see. Daniel met his gaze steadily. Funny thing about blades, he said, brushing past, they don't wag their tails. Korvek's eyes narrowed, venomous with jealousy. He watched Daniel disappear down the hall, already plotting. That night, alarms blared across campus. Sirens howled through the dormitories, crimson lights washing the corridors. A mechanical voice announced the unthinkable. Containment breach. Laboratory specimen escaped. Terror-Hound loose on campus. Students screamed. Doors sealed. Security squads rushed to arm themselves. Daniel's heart sank. Brutus was free. Fangs, fear, and loyalty. The corridors of Velar Prime University pulsed red with emergency lights. Sirens wailed like grieving spirits, echoing through the halls. Students scrambled for shelter, their panic amplified by the automated warnings. Specimen breached containment. Priority 1 threat. Avoid corridors. Engage lockdown. Daniel shoved through the press of bodies, his heart hammering. He already knew who the specimen was. Brutus. He sprinted down the main hall, ignoring the cries of those who tried to pull him back. You'll get torn apart, a scaled classmate shouted, but Daniel barely heard. His only thought was the beast loose and terrified in a world that saw only as a weapon. At the far end of the hall, a crash thundered. Students scattered in shrieking waves as a massive shape barreled into view. Brutus. The Terror-Hound's amber eyes blazed, its muscles rippling beneath quill-furred hide. It roared, a sound that rattled teeth and made the corridor itself seem to shiver. Security squads arrived, rifles glowing as they powered up stun charges. Hold fire until my mark, barked the squad leader, a broad-shelled alien with mandibles clicking. If it gets close, aim for the head. Brutus spun, growling at the advancing guards. His tail lashed against the walls, denting metal. Every step he took screamed fury and fear. Daniel raised his hands. Wait, don't shoot, the squad leader whirled. Human, get back. That beast will rip you in half. But Daniel kept moving forward. His voice was steady though his throat was dry. He's not dangerous. Not if you let me handle it. The Terror-Hound's gaze snapped toward him. For one terrible moment, Daniel thought Brutus might not recognize him. The beast's growl deepened, echoing down the hall like rolling thunder. Then Daniel dropped to one knee, just as he had in the lab. His voice was quiet, soft against the backdrop of sirens. Hey, buddy, it's me. You're scared, huh? Brutus's ears twitched. The growl faltered. His nostrils flared, scenting the air. Yeah, Daniel whispered. I know. Too many lights. Too many strangers. But you're safe now. I'm here. The beast took one heavy step forward, claws scraping sparks against the floor. The guards tensed, rifles aimed. Daniel didn't flinch. He reached out his hand, palm open, relaxed. Come on, Brutus. Remember what we do. Another step. The air was thick with dread, every alien watching with wide, unblinking eyes. Then Brutus lowered his massive head, pressing his muzzle against Daniel's hand. A deep rumble vibrated through his chest. Not the growl of rage, but the soft, trembling sound of relief. Daniel scratched behind his ear. Brutus let out a sound halfway between a sigh and a whine, then collapsed onto his haunches like a giant, armored puppy. The corridor erupted in stunned silence. By the stars, someone whispered. Daniel stood, resting a hand on Brutus's massive head. See? He just needed someone he trusts. The squad leader's mandibles clicked in disbelief. This is not possible. Professor Warth arrived moments later, breathless, his bronze scales dulled with exertion. His eyes widened at the sight, the human calmly stroking the Terror-Hound while security officers stood paralyzed. Incredible, YYRTH breathed. The legends said Terror-Hounds bowed only to warlords who beat them into submission. Yet you, without a lash, without pain, have turned wrath into loyalty. Daniel looked down at Brutus, who thumped his tail heavily against the floor, making a sound like a drumbeat. He's not loyal because he's afraid, Daniel said firmly. He's loyal because he trusts me. That's a big difference. The professor nodded slowly, all replacing skepticism. Perhaps humanity's gift is not dominance. It is empathy. The security squad lowered their weapons, though unease lingered in their eyes. None dared approach. Later, when Brutus was safely coaxed back into his reinforced enclosure, Daniel confronted Professor YYRTH. Someone let him out, Daniel said, voice tight. He didn't break free on his own. He was panicked, not violent. YYRTH's frilled crest shifted uneasily. You suspect sabotage? I don't suspect. Daniel's mind replayed the sneer on Korvek's face, the venom in his words. I know. The professor's eyes narrowed. If true, the implications are severe. They didn't need to wait long. By the next cycle, evidence confirmed Daniel's fear. Tampered security logs and spliced access codes traced back to Korvek. The saboteur was expelled in disgrace, but not before spitting venom at Daniel. The beast will betray you, human. One day, when your back is turned, it will remember what it is. Daniel ignored him, but the words clung like shadow. Days later, Daniel returned to the lab to find an unexpected visitor. Not a student, not a professor, but a figure clad in the armor of galactic security. The officer's voice was sharp, cutting. Human Daniel Hale, you and the Terror-Hound are summoned. A military faction has taken interest in your bond. They believe you may prove useful. Brutus rumbled low in his pen, eyes glowing with distrust. Daniel's stomach sank. He scratched behind the beast's ear, trying to mask his unease. Useful. That was the word the galaxy always used before it broke something. Gentleness is stronger. The galactic security officer's arrival cast a shadow over the lab. His armor gleamed black under the sterile lights, insignias marking him as part of the Concord's military liaison. His voice was clipped, every word deliberate. The High Command has heard reports, he said, gaze fixed on Daniel. A human who pacifies a Terror-Hound without chains or pain. They see opportunity. You will accompany me. The beast will be tested. Daniel's jaw tightened. He glanced at Brutus, who pressed against the barrier, eyes never leaving him. The beast growled low, a sound of distrust. I'm not interested in turning him into a weapon, Daniel replied flatly. The officer's mandibles clicked in amusement. You misunderstand. Your interest is irrelevant. Orders are orders. The Concord has wars to fight, and your bond with this creature may shift entire campaigns. Do not confuse sentiment with choice. Professor YYRTH bristled, but said nothing. His hands trembled over his datapad. He knew the Concord's appetite for control, and defiance rarely ended well. Daniel knelt by Brutus's pen, rubbing the beast's jaw through the barrier. Easy, buddy. I won't let them hurt you. The officer's expression hardened. We will see. The demonstration arena was vast, its walls towering with reinforced plating. Dozens of officials and officers filled the observation decks above, their eyes glittering with curiosity and hunger. Brutus was released at the center, his hackles raised, claws gouging trenches into the floor. Daniel stood opposite him, under the harsh glare of floodlights. Begin the trial, barked a voice from above. Electrical prods activated along the walls, sparking arcs that seared the air. Brutus roared, the sound shaking the arena. His tail lashed like a whip, and he threw himself against the walls, teeth gnashing. The audience leaned forward, eager for violence. Daniel's fists clenched. Stop this, he shouted. You're terrifying him. But the prods intensified. Brutus's amber eyes burned with rage, his body coiled to strike. He turned toward Daniel, massive muscles bunching. The officers leaned forward, weapons primed. This was the moment they expected, the beast tearing its so-called master apart. Daniel stepped forward anyway. He ignored the sparks, the shouted warnings, the hiss of weapons charging. His voice cut through the chaos, low and steady. "Hey, buddy, look at me." Brutus froze mid-charge, chest heaving. "You're not alone," Daniel said, slowly raising his hand. "You're safe. I'm here." He knelt, bringing himself level with the beast's gaze, the same way he had the first day. Brutus snarled, jaws parting, saliva dripping. The officers above tightened their grips on the trigger controls. Then Daniel scratched behind his ear. The snarl collapsed into a trembling whine. Brutus's eyes softened, the fury draining away. He pressed his massive head against Daniel's chest, shuddering, then sagged to the ground with a sound like a sigh. The arena fell into stunned silence. Up in the observation decks, officials shifted uncomfortably. What they had expected was dominance, fear, a leash forged through power. What they saw instead was loyalty born from something none of them had considered worth studying: kindness. Professor YYRTH's voice carried, breaking the silence. "For all our science, for all our weapons, none of US could achieve what this human has done. He has not bent the beast with chains, nor carved its obedience with pain. He has offered compassion and received devotion." The officer who had summoned Daniel looked down at him, mandibles clicking in agitation. But even he could not deny the evidence before his eyes. The demonstration had not created a weapon. It had created a bond. After the trial, the officials dispersed, their voices hushed with unease. No orders were given to seize Brutus, nor to weaponize him. Not yet. The implications were too unpredictable. Daniel returned to the lab, with Brutus lumbering at his side. The beast's head brushed his shoulder as they walked, tail thumping against the floor with every step. "You did good," Daniel whispered, rubbing his jaw. "Real good." Brutus rumbled in contentment. Professor YYRTH met them at the lab entrance, his eyes alight with something like pride. "You have changed more today than you realize, human. The galaxy believes strength lies in domination. But you showed them gentleness is stronger still." Daniel gave a tired smile. "I didn't change anything. Brutus did. I just listened." The professor inclined his head. "Perhaps listening is the rarest strength of all." Days later, the lab was calmer. Students began to approach, though still wary. Brutus growled when they drew near, but when Daniel scratched his ear, the beast stilled, eyes softening. With visible hesitation, one brave student extended a trembling hand. Daniel nodded. "Go on. Slow. Gentle." The student scratched awkwardly behind Brutus's ear. To their astonishment, the Terror-Hound tolerated it, rumbling softly. Gasps filled the room. For the first time, the impossible barrier of fear had cracked. Daniel smiled, leaning back against Brutus's massive shoulder. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the gentlest touch tames the fiercest heart." And for the first time in centuries, a Terror-Hound purred.